Okay, so we all talk about inequality, right? We see the charts, we hear the endless debates. But today, we're going to look at this whole topic through a completely new and honestly a much more powerful lens, one that connects these huge global economic forces to the feelings right inside your own head.
So let's just jump right in. We always measure inequality in dollars and cents. But what if we can measure it in something else? What if we can measure it in pressure? What if inequality isn't just a static number, but a dynamic, active force? A kind of invisible pressure that's building up in our society, in our institutions, and yeah, even inside of us.
To really get this new idea, we first have to understand the two big stories we usually tell ourselves about why inequality happens in the first place. For decades, these two views have been in a constant tug-of-war, and they basically shape every single political debate we have.
So, in one corner, you've got the classical view. The basic idea here is that markets are mostly efficient and inequality is just the natural result of people having different skills and, making different choices. But in the other corner, you have the view from economists like Yanis Varoufakis, and he argues that, no, the game is rigged. From this perspective, inequality isn't an accident. It's built right into the structure of our society through power and political decisions.
And this disagreement goes deep. I mean, just look at this table. For classical economics, a crisis is like a rare glitch, an unexpected shock. For Varoufakis, it's a feature, not a bug. In one worldview, debt is just another financial tool. In the other, it's a mechanism of control. These aren't just small differences. We're talking about two fundamentally different ways of seeing how the world works.
So we have these two giant clashing theories about the economy. But what if they're both missing a crucial piece of the puzzle? What if the most important effects of inequality aren't just happening out there in the world, but are actually happening inside our own biology?
This is where a field called neuroeconomics comes in, and it is fascinating. It shows that living in a highly unequal system literally changes your brain. It can rewire your reward circuits, it can heighten your stress response, and it can even change how much you trust other people. Suddenly, inequality isn't just some abstract concept on a graph. It's a physical, biological experience.
So how do you possibly connect these massive economic structures with the neurological reality happening inside our heads? It seems like a huge leap. Well, we need a new language. And this is where the theory of strain comes in. It's a new framework that lets us understand this imbalance.
Here's the core idea. Strain is simply an imbalance in a system. But here's the magic. It's the force that connects all the dots. So one person's financial debt becomes their psychological stress. And when millions of people feel that exact same stress, it can transform into a political crisis. You see, it's all the same energy, just changing its form as it moves through the system.
Now, this strain isn't just sitting there. It's active. It has four distinct dynamics. First, there's the load. That's the initial pressure hitting an individual or the system. Then there's the flow. That's how that pressure moves and spreads through society. Crucially, there's storage, how that pressure accumulates over time in our memories and our institutions. And finally, you get the discharge, the eventual, often explosive, release of all that stored up energy.
Now, when you put those four dynamics together, you get a cycle, a surprisingly predictable one. This stops being just a theory and starts looking more like a map of how social pressure builds up, how it actually distorts a society's thinking, and how it eventually finds a release valve.
And here's how that cycle actually plays out. Stage 1. The system generates strain through things like debt and low wages. Stage 2. It accumulates in the population as widespread stress and a loss of trust. Stage 3, and this is critical, it starts to distort how we all think, leading to deep polarization and those us versus them narratives. And Stage 4, all that pressure has to go somewhere. It discharges as a financial crisis, or social unrest, or a political upheaval, which then leads to the final stage, some kind of rebalancing, or, in some cases, collapse.
This quote just puts it perfectly. A crisis, whether it's a market crash or a social uprising, isn't some random accident. It's a phase transition. It's what happens when a system becomes so saturated with strain that it simply has to change its state, like water turning to steam. It's a predictable breaking point.
Okay, we've been talking about massive forces here, economics, politics, but this theory of strain makes an even more profound connection, one that goes right down to our most personal, intimate experiences. So let me ask you a weird question. Where does all that societal pressure go when you go to sleep at night?
That's right. It goes into our dreams.
The theory proposes that our dreams are one of the key places where our brains try to process all of this collective strain. The anxieties of the economy, that fear of falling behind, the pressure to always be performing, they don't just disappear. They get encoded into the weird, symbolic language of our dreams. It's a micro-reflection of a macro imbalance.
So why does looking at the world this way really matter? Because it reframes, well, everything. Our economies, our political systems, even our cultures, can all be seen as these massive, complex systems designed for one main purpose: to manage, distribute, and release strain.
This is really the ultimate synthesis. Varoufakis explains the why, the political machinery that creates inequality. But this theory of strain, this brain kinematics model, it gives us the how. It explains the physics of that inequality, showing how it operates as a dynamic force that builds, flows, and eventually breaks things. And this leads us to the most important takeaway of all. The problem with massive inequality isn't just that it's unfair. It's a problem of physics. It makes our entire system unstable. It's like storing a dangerous amount of potential energy in a social structure that simply was not designed to hold it.
And that leaves us with this final and pretty urgent question. We can see the strain accumulating all around us, politically, socially, environmentally. So if our societies are really just giant strain-regulating systems, what happens when they fail? What happens when they just can't absorb any more pressure? What does that final discharge look like? That's the question this new lens forces all of us to ask.